If demos on your website are the most important thing, what's the second most important thing?
You're a voice actor. You're an entrepreneur. You're a VOPRENEUR. Welcome to the Everyday VOPRENEUR podcast, your guide through the business of voiceover.
You have a great website, right? Well, make sure you host it at some place that doesn't suck. Hey, it's Brad Newman, fellow VO Pro for 28 years and owner of UpperLevelHosting.com. People ask why us, and that's simple. We make it easy, respect your time, save you money, and just make all the magic happen. You don't need to know all the tech stuff when it comes to hosting your website. We got you. Ask around. Tens of thousands of client interactions later, and 6 years of amazing customer service, and not a single negative complaint, ever. UpperLevelHosting.com.
The VOPRENEUR podcast. Hey, it doesn't suck.
Not as funny as Conan. Not as cute as Seth Meyers. Not as smart as Colbert. But he's one of us, and that counts for something. Here's Mark Scott, the original Everyday VOPreneur.
Hello and welcome to the Everyday VOpreneur podcast, your guide through the business of voiceover. I'm Mark Scott, the original Everyday VOpreneur, ready to drop some more actionable, practical advice on you that you can use to grow your voiceover business. And this week, we are talking about your website. One of the things that I do in my voiceover coaching is help voice actors to figure out whether or not their website is doing what it needs to do, giving them ways where they might be able to make improvements on their website. Sometimes with our websites, the reality is we're too close to it. We're seeing the website through our eyes, which means we're not seeing it through the eyes of a user or the eyes of a buyer. And so when we are looking at it through our eyes, there are things that we're probably forgetting to put on the site or not thinking to put on the site because we know who we are, we know what we do, we know what the process is of working with us, and so it's something that is often overlooked. So in coaching sessions, I will look at websites for voice actors and see them through a different set of eyes, and doing that often brings clarity to some things that might need to be addressed. And one of the things that needs to be addressed is the call to action. So at the top of the episode, I said, if demos are the most important thing on your website, which I believe they are, great demos are going to do a lot of the selling for you, then the second most important thing on your website is a clear call to action. And in this episode, I want to share 5 different things that you can use for a clear call to action. But before we get to that part, I want to help you understand why this is so important. A clear call to action tells someone visiting your website what the next step is. And for many voice actors, the call to action, as it were, on their website is usually something like, contact me. Contact me for what? Contact me for travel advice, contact me for a great cookie recipe, contact me for a list of my favorite bands. What does contact me mean? Contact me is not a clear call to action. If somebody is on your website and they're thinking about working with you, you want to be able to remove all barriers and any potential confusion points that are going to keep them from working with you. That's what the call to action does. The call to action says, here's what to do next. Here is the next step in the journey. A well-written call to action will encourage engagement. It's going to prompt the visitor to do something. It's going to get them to take a specific action. It's going to lead them towards a conversation. It's going to get them moving towards collaboration and/or partnership with you. Contact me doesn't do that. Contact me, again, is what most voice actors have on their website. A clear call to action is going to drive conversions. What do I mean by that? If you can look at your Google Analytics or whatever analytics you may be using to track traffic on your website, and you can see that you're getting a ton of traffic on your website, but you're not getting a lot of inquiries through your website, it could very well be that it's because you lack a clear call to action. You're giving people your demos and saying, contact me, and they're saying, contact you for what? So again, it comes back to really spelling things out clearly. People will leave your website when they aren't sure what they're supposed to do next. So part of our responsibility from a marketing standpoint and from the standpoint of a VOpreneur is to leave no room for doubt about how they can start the journey towards working together. Something else you need to understand about how people consume websites, and I think as soon as I say this, it's going to click with you because this is probably what you do. People don't really read websites anymore. By and large, people scan websites. A button with a clear and simple call to action is going to stand out while they are scanning. In fact, it might be one of the only parts of your website that they actually pay attention to because it's something that's going to grab their eye. It's something that's going to catch their attention. And consider not only the text of the call to action, which we're going to get to, but also the design and the location of the call to action. I think it should be a button of some form or fashion. I think that it should have a contrasting color so that it stands out, like clearly stands out from all the other content and design elements of your website. And I think it's also something that should be used in more than one place. As people scroll through your website and they go through each of the individual sections, maybe they're reading about your service, followed by a call to action. Maybe they're reading about your studio equipment, followed by a call to action. Maybe they're looking at your testimonials in your client list, followed by a call to action. And so it really is something that should be on your website more than one time. Something else you need to understand. Reading websites and consuming content burns calories, and people don't want to burn calories. What do I mean by that? We want things to be as easy as possible. We want to put in as minimal effort as possible. I think we can probably blame social media for that to a degree, killing our attention spans, but that's another episode for another day. The point is, we don't want to make potential buyers work too hard. When your website is laid out simply and clearly, and that call to action is right there in front of their face, it leaves no room for doubt or confusion about what is happening next. A great call to action creates clarity for the user, and clarity leads to conversions. A call to action also gives you a measurable metric. Are people actually following through on whatever your call to action is? Right now, if your call to action is contact me, are people actually contacting you? By changing out that call to action, you can better determine, based on the specific inquiries that you start to get through your website, whether or not it's actually working. And again, we're going to get to those specific call to actions here in just a moment. But this is a really easy way to see whether or not it's made a difference. And I know for me on my website, it made a difference. The bottom line here is that call to actions play a pivotal role in guiding the behavior of the visitor to your website, whether that is a lead, a prospect, or even a client that's looking at your website. It is going to drive more conversions, and it's also going to improve the overall user experience of your website because, again, people can very clearly see what to do next. They're not trying to figure out what the next step is or where do I go from here. And so I think that by getting that call to action on your website, by making it clear, by making it pop, by making it stand out, you can much more effectively convince and motivate visitors to take whatever the action is that you're asking them to take so that you can achieve whatever the objective is that you are trying to achieve. So with all of that, you understand why the call to action is so important. So let's next take a look at what are some calls to action that you might want to consider using on your website that isn't contact me. We're talking about websites in this episode of the podcast, and one of the most important features that you need on your website, which is that very clear call to action. Have you ever had outside eyes look at your website? Now, if you had it built by a professional, maybe you don't need it. But every once in a while, it's a good idea to have those outside eyes to take a look. And that is something that I am happy to do in a coaching session if you want a little bit of extra help and an extra set of eyes on your website. That's just one of the many types of marketing services and marketing coaching that I offer to voice actors. And if you are ever interested in getting a little bit of help with your marketing, if you're ever interested in talking about specific strategies, whether it's for your website, for your emails, or social media, any form of marketing your voiceover business, you can find the coaching services that I offer, including courses and private one-on-one sessions, and they are all available on the website at VOPRENEUR.com. That's VOPRENEUR.com. It would be a privilege to have the opportunity to work with you.
Now, back to our show.
All right, so here we go. 5 different calls to action that you could use on your website. And I'm not going to say that these are the only ones that you could use. I'm saying think about these ones as possibilities, and any of these 5 are going to be better than a simple contact me. So number 1 would be to request a custom quote. One of the most common inquiries that you probably get when people are reaching out to you about voiceover work is, can you tell me how much this is going to cost? Can you provide me with your rates? What are your rates for X, right? And obviously rates are something that we don't generally just send out a blanket email with, here's my rate card. I mean, some people do that, but most of us are not doing that. What we really want to be able to do is create a custom quote based on the project. And so request a custom quote becomes a really clear call to action. Somebody's listened to your demos, they've read about your services, they understand what you have to offer, and the next step in the journey, request a custom quote. So that could be one call to action that you would want to try. A second call to action, request a custom audition. Now, people have listened to your demos. They like what you hear. The voice that they hear in your demos, or the read that they hear in your demos, that syncs up with the voice that they were hearing inside of their head for their project. And so now they know that they're ready to take the next step. They're definitely interested in working with you. And then they see that call to action to request a custom audition. This is perfect. Now I get to hear not just what they sound like on their demos, I get to hear what they sound like on my script. I get to hear whether or not, as Cliff Zellman says, your demo is a promise. Can they deliver on that promise? So this call to action shows your willingness to provide personalized service, and that is going to have a strong appeal to potential buyers who are visiting your website. So that's call to action number 2 that you could try. Request a custom audition. And let's just be clear, by the way, these calls to action, like these 2 in particular, they might just take you to a web form. And that's fine if they take you to a web form and somebody's going to fill out a web form, but now they know what to put in the web form. When it's just contact me in a web form, they're not sure what to put. But if it's request a custom quote and it takes them to a web form, they now know what they're asking for. If it's request a custom audition in a web form, they now know what they're asking for. And you could even tailor that message. If your call to action is going to be request a custom quote, you might have 1 or 2 qualifying questions that you ask in that web form. Or you might have a brief line of text that explains what information they should be providing to get that custom quote. If your call to action is requesting a custom audition, you might have a note that goes along with your web form that pops out that reminds them to include a copy of their script when they send a message to you. So yes, it's very important that we have this clear call to action, but the second step in that is making sure that you qualify it by getting the right information so you can deliver on the goods. Call to action number 3, schedule a consult. You could word this a couple of different ways, but the bottom line is I think the easiest way to execute this is through a Calendly link. Calendly changed my life. Calendly changed my business. And chances are, if you've ever booked a coaching session with me or a free 15-minute consultation with me, you've seen I use Calendly for everything. It is probably the number 1 influencer and controller of my schedule. And so if you are going to go with something like schedule a consult or schedule a chat or schedule a virtual coffee or schedule a Zoom session or whatever it is, however you decide to use the language, the idea here is we want to be able to get a meeting with them. So having that particular call to action, it might be that when they click the button, a thing pops up for Calendly and they can grab a time slot from your calendar. Makes it very simple, makes it very easy, and that can be a very practical call to action to have on your website. And then you could go along with that by saying, in this 15-minute consultation, we can discuss specific project details. You can give me a script that I can record a custom audition for, and you can send me project specs so that I can provide you with a custom quote. So you see how this works? We build on it. Number 4, and again, just one example of the language, but bring your project to life. It could be that you say something like that. It could be book your voiceover. Something that says the next step, let's get to work. Bring your project to life. It creates a sense of collaboration. It creates a sense of partnership. And it's inviting that leader prospect that's on your website to bring their project to life. pretty much speaks for itself. So this is a call to action that really says, I'm ready to collaborate. I'm ready to add value to your work. And that in and of itself can encourage people to take the next step. Again, if you're going to use a call to action like this, so the actual button that's on your website says, bring your project to life, and they click it. And maybe that takes them down to a web form where you can then qualify that by giving them a few instructions on what to send in their message to you. Provide me with the script, provide me with project specs, provide me with where it is intended to be used, how many minutes of narration you require, whatever. Don't get too crazy with this because we don't want to scare people, right? You don't want to force them to give you all the information. You just want to convince them to send that initial email. You can flesh out all the other details once you're having a conversation with them. The point here is that you're just making it abundantly clear. You're removing doubt, you're removing confusion, you're removing barriers. Now, the fifth call to action is one that I've played around with in a slightly different way, but it's basically a button that might say something like, download my voiceover guide. So maybe you're going to create a free PDF that outlines 5 tips for working with a professional voice actor, or 5 things that go into providing an accurate voiceover quote, or what it's like to work with me in 3 easy steps. Something like that. You understand what I'm saying. But the point is they click that button and they get this free download. And maybe that free download literally walks them step by step through the journey. In the first step, you're going to send me information about your project, including these things. In the second step, I'm going to respond to your message with a custom audition that I've recorded from a portion of your script and provide you with an estimate based on the information that you've given me. In the third step, we can schedule a Zoom chat to have a conversation and clarify everything and make sure that we're on the same page. On the fourth step, I'm going to record your voiceover, deliver the audio. You get what I'm saying here. The point is, you can create a very simple guide. 1 page, not a lot of text, just a couple of very clear steps of what it might be like to work with you, or what information you require for a quote, or what they need to do in order to get their custom audition. Or maybe it's something that outlines some of your policies as far as turnaround time and revisions and all of that sort of stuff. But it's just something that's meant to maybe answer a few more of their questions, provide a little bit more clarity, and help them figure out what to do next. This is the most important thing in all of it. Regardless of which call to action that you ultimately decide, the point of that call to action needs to be to very clearly help them understand what to do next. Remove all barriers, remove all confusion. Contact me is not a call to action. So here's your actionable practical advice for this episode. Settle on a call to action. Try it on your website for maybe 30 days and see whether or not, as you continue to market and drive traffic to your website, does having that cleared call to action make a difference? Do you see an uptick in the number of people that you inquire? Or are the inquiries that you're getting through your website suddenly more qualified because they know what they need to provide you with? I think it's absolutely going to be worth it. 1 clear call to action that stands out from all of the other design elements on your page, is repeated throughout your page so that they never have to go back looking for it. That's something else, right? If it's just in the top corner of your page, but then they're scrolling through your website while they're reading and they get halfway through your website and there's no call to action, they're probably not going to scroll back up to the top to find it. So make sure that it's repeated throughout your page. Make it easy, make it accessible, and make it clear what the next step is. Get this on your website, and I absolutely believe that you are going to see an uptick in your conversions. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.
The Everyday VOpreneur Podcast. Available everywhere fine podcasts are given away for free. Mostly, we think.
Having your voiceover demos easily playable and downloadable on your website is essential. The VoiceZam player lets you do that across any device and browser. There are also options for adding play buttons in your email signature, tracking your listens, and even putting videos in your demo player. Sign up now at voicezam.com/MarkScott and receive an instant $25 credit. For full details and to claim this offer, visit voicezam.com/MarkScott.
And scene.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for hanging in. Thanks for hanging out. Want more VOpreneur goodness? Jump online at VOpreneur.com.